The miracle doctor won't be a kept man. My heart belongs ashore. Chapter 791. The 6 women nearby naturally noticed Yvonne Quinn. Initially, they all felt they were beautiful, but when they saw Yvonne, they immediately felt overshadowed. Even more importantly, they lacked Yvonne's aura. Despite her delicate appearance, which made her seem like a frail patient, she could still captivate and drive men crazy. Yvonne felt the gazes from the group and noticed Sofia Carter approaching, but she acted as if she hadn't seen them. She didn't know Joshua, so she ignored him and looked for a place to sit. Her entrance also drew the attention of other men. A few initially wanted to approach her but stepped back when they saw Joshua going over, knowing they couldn't afford to offend him. Seeing everyone's reaction, Joshua smirked confidently and walked toward Yvonne. In his eyes, a woman like her deserved to belong to him only. Yvonne spotted a booth for 2 and was about to sit there. "Beautiful. How about a drink with me?" Joshua invited her graciously. Yvonne's brows furrowed slightly, and her face showed a hint of displeasure. "Mr. Carter, do you know this woman?" A woman in a red dress followed him, flashing her bright red lips as she looked at Joshua. "Every encounter in life is fate," Joshua replied cleverly, concealing that he didn't know Yvonne. "You're so witty, Mr. Carter." The woman in red complimented but showed jealousy and envy in her gaze. She was clearly upset that Joshua admired Yvonne so much. The other women wore similar expressions. To them, Yvonne's outfit and makeup were all an act to appear innocent and attract attention at the Snow Butterfly Ballroom. "Hi, can we get to know each other?" Joshua extended his hand gracefully, wanting to shake Yvonne's hand. "Not interested." Yvonne had already sat down in the booth. "Huh," the woman in red chuckled. "What are you pretending to be so pure for?" The other 5 women shared her disdain, adding, "Playing innocent here. Are you sick? If you want to act pure, go home and be a proper young lady. This kind of woman is probably more passionate in bed than a vixen." The jealousy of the 6 women erupted like a volcano. Their argument drew the attention of many around them, and people turned to watch. A few approached and politely greeted Joshua. "Hello, Mr. Carter." Joshua kept his smile focused on Yvonne. When the women had almost vented their anger, he suddenly raised his hand and slapped the woman in red. "Shut up." "Ah!" The woman in red screamed. Her eyes flashed with resentment but quickly returned to normal as she forced a smile and said, "Mr. Carter, we just wanted her to join you for a drink." She quickly backed away, her eyes filled with vigilance and anger. She was furious at Yvonne. The other 5 women remained silent but looked at Yvonne with jealousy and anger. "Beautiful, I'm sorry. They were being rude and I apologize." Joshua maintained his courteous demeanor. Yvonne looked at the waiter as if she hadn't heard him. "I'd like 2 glasses of juice, 1 lemon, 1 strawberry. The lemon one should be extra sour." The waiter glanced at Joshua. Joshua was visibly annoyed at being ignored but maintained his composure. "Put it on my tab." "Yes, Mr. Carter." The waiter quickly went to prepare the juices. Joshua turned to the others. "Go back to your seats." They nodded. At that moment, the rhythm in the ballroom picked up again and many people were already on the dance floor, gyrating away. The 6 women stayed at their seats, some drinking, some smoking, and some doing their makeup, but all showed discontent toward Yvonne. In their eyes, Joshua had treated them well until Yvonne appeared and changed everything, making them feel unattractive. They hated Yvonne from the bottom of their hearts. Joshua wanted to sit across from Yvonne, but eventually gave up and returned to his seat. Yvonne ignored them entirely. She was curious, though, wondering who Joshua was. At that moment, Kiran York walked in. Since it was dancing time, the lighting inside wasn't great. Joshua and the others didn't notice Kiran. Kiran had already spotted Joshua, and a slight smile curled on his lips. He thought to himself, what a coincidence. Yvonne looked at Kiran and waved her fair right hand. Kiran smiled and walked over. As soon as he sat down, Yvonne pushed the lemon juice toward him with a bright smile. Kiran was feeling thirsty, so he picked up the straw and took a big sip. Immediately, his expression twisted. With his mouth full of lemon juice, Kiran looked at Yvonne. Yvonne covered her mouth with her delicate hand and had a brilliant smile. Gulp! Kiran finally swallowed it. Giggle. Yvonne burst out laughing. Her bell-like laughter echoed through the ballroom, seemingly stirring Joshua's heart. "Who's that guy?" the woman in red asked deliberately. "Looks like that frail girl really likes this man," added another woman who had intentionally spilled wine on her clothes. The 2 women's words greatly irritated Joshua, who stood up and walked toward Kiran. Kiran, with his back to Joshua, didn't notice him. Moreover, since Joshua had no threatening aura, Kiran didn't care. Joshua felt invisible and was getting irritated. He walked up behind Kiran, raised his hand, and patted Kiran's shoulder, saying, "Get lost!" Joshua's words were full of bravado. In his eyes, who was Kiran to compete with him for a woman in Dragon City? To him, Yvonne was already his woman. "You get lost!" Yvonne turned to Joshua and spoke up for Kiran. Joshua was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect Yvonne to speak to him like this for Kiran. Kiran recognized Joshua's voice, and his eyes were full of amusement. Did Joshua fancy his woman? First, it was Serena Zimmerman. Now, it's Yvonne Quinn. Kiran slowly turned his head and looked at Joshua, smiling even wider. Joshua recognized Kiran immediately and was equally shocked. "How is it you?" Chapter 792. "Who said it can't be me?" Kiran York asked calmly, his tone relaxed. Yvonne Quinn raised an eyebrow slightly. "Do you know him? Joshua Carter?" Kiran smiled. Yvonne was momentarily stunned and gave Joshua a sympathetic look. Was he volunteering for trouble? Seeing it was Kiran, Joshua recovered quickly from his brief shock. Smiling, he said, "It's a small world, isn't it? Yeah, are you interested in her this time?" Kiran pointed at Yvonne. Joshua's mouth twitched slightly in embarrassment, but he nodded. "That's right. At least you're honest," Kiran remarked. A cold glint flashed in Joshua's eyes, but he quickly regained his composure and looked at Yvonne. "He has women around him, beautiful ones." "Am I not beautiful?" Yvonne smiled and retorted. Joshua felt awkward. He wanted to hint that Kiran wasn't trustworthy and should be avoided. However, Yvonne's self-confidence and lack of concern caught him off guard. Joshua's gaze sharpened, becoming cold and indifferent. Yvonne didn't seem to mind, smiling at Kiran. "Isn't the lemon sour?" "Very sour, but not as sour as my heart," Yvonne said mournfully. "You have so many beautiful women around you that I'm constantly jealous." "I might turn into pickled cabbage from all this jealousy." Yvonne, already beautiful and captivating, looked even more pitiful with her mournful expression, making her all the more endearing. Joshua thought about how he had approached Yvonne, only to be ignored. Now she was actively flirting with Kiran, which irritated him and frustrated him. His gaze became colder as he looked at Kiran. "What's your name? You don't deserve to know." Yvonne interrupted again. Joshua hadn't expected her to provoke him once more. His eyes turned icy. Kiran took another sip of lemon juice, making a sour face as he looked at Yvonne. "You shouldn't always be jealous. I already have a wife." "I still like you. I love being jealous," Yvonne continued in a coy tone. Joshua's emotions were in turmoil. He hadn't expected Yvonne, whom he fancied, to pursue Kiran so openly, only to be rejected. Seeing Yvonne now was like looking in a mirror, reflecting his own unrequited pursuits. He took the initiative to pursue her but couldn't get her. This realization intensified his anger. He glared at Kiran. "This is Dragon City, not Bayville. What's the difference?" Kiran looked at Yvonne in front of him. "You love me in Bayville but not in Dragon City?" "I'd love you even if I died," Yvonne declared, happily flaunting her affection. Joshua's anger surged, yet he managed to hold it in and return to his seat. He sent a message, "Come to the Snow Butterfly dance hall and deal with someone for me." After sending the message, he returned to his seat and aggressively embraced the woman in the red dress, his hands roaming as if she were Yvonne. Although the woman in red knew he didn't truly like her, she played along, letting out seductive moans to entice him. The other 5 women, sensing an opportunity, also approached and flirted with Joshua. Joshua's heart was filled with cold laughter. While holding these women, his mind was occupied with thoughts of destroying Kiran and claiming Yvonne. Yvonne and Kiran, on the other hand, remained calm and natural. Their demeanor only fueled Joshua's anger and hatred. Within 20 minutes, the Snow Butterfly dance hall door was pushed open, and a dozen burly men entered. Their sudden appearance changed the atmosphere of the hall. Joshua saw them and proudly raised his right hand, snapping his fingers. The men immediately turned their gaze towards him and quickly approached. "Good evening, Mr. Carter." Joshua nodded slightly, his gaze landing on Kiran. The other patrons in the hall looked sympathetic towards Kiran, thinking he was in for trouble. The dozen men understood Joshua's intentions and headed towards Kiran's table. The 6 women also saw an opportunity to vent their anger, standing up and approaching Kiran and Yvonne's booth. Yvonne suddenly grabbed Kiran's hand. "Honey, when are you going to sleep with me?" This question caused the approaching men to hesitate, taken aback. Asking to sleep with someone? A beauty asking to sleep with someone? What kind of world was this? Joshua, sitting in his seat, felt a heavy blow to his heart, making him even more frustrated and angry. "Take down that scumbag," he ordered loudly. "Yes," the men responded immediately, their eyes locked on Kiran. The 6 women, eager to insult Kiran, crossed their arms in front of them, looking at him arrogantly. "Kid, you should just hand your woman over to Mr. Carter. It's smart not to suffer. Someone like you doesn't deserve a woman like her," It's better to be smart. Mr. Carter is kind and will take good care of her. The 6 women took turns taunting Kiran, thinking about how they wanted to see Yvonne humiliated by Joshua. Honey, someone wants to molest me. What should I do? Yvonne grabbed Kiran's hand, pretending to be nervous and about to cry. Kiran found it amusing. Yvonne was really good at acting. What he found even more amusing was Joshua. Did he want a woman so badly that he'd gone mad? Kiran raised an eyebrow, looking at the 12 men and 6 women. What day is it today? What do you mean? They asked, confused. Why are the mad dogs out biting people on a good day? Kiran asked mockingly. Mad dogs? The woman in red repeated instinctively, but as soon as she did, anger surged to her head. Who are you calling a mad dog? Did I call anyone a mad dog? Kiran looked at her with a playful smile. Kill him! Joshua couldn't take it anymore and shouted at his men. Kid, you asked for this. One of the men, furious, raised his hand to strike. Break his balls! The woman in red shouted angrily. Kid, you're dead! The man's fist came down. Kill him! The women shouted excitedly. One of the men nearby was already sweating profusely, about to kneel. Chapter 793. Facing the incoming fist, Kiran York didn't even move. He simply picked up a fork from the table and raised it towards the oncoming punch. The motion was swift and precise, causing the burly man to stop in his tracks. If the punch connected, his hand would be severely injured. Startled, he quickly retracted his fist, lost his balance due to inertia, and fell to the ground with a loud thud. Ouch! The burly man groaned in pain, clutching his body. Nice! The 6 women nearby cheered, mistakenly thinking the man had hit Kiran. Realizing their mistake, they fell silent, their faces showing disbelief and confusion. They had cheered for the wrong person. The woman in red, infuriated, yelled, You bastard! If you don't kneel and beg for mercy right now, I'll make sure you're crippled today. Just then, the man who had almost knelt earlier suddenly dropped to his knees. He kneeled. The woman in red shouted in excitement, You know what's good for you. Her voice trailed off as she covered her mouth in shock, seeing that it was one of their own who had knelt. Everyone else stared wide-eyed at the kneeling man. Who are you kneeling to? Another man beside him angrily kicked him on the shoulder. Oh. The kneeling man groaned but remained upright, still kneeling before Kiran. Sofia Carter, who had expected his men to handle the situation easily, was furious to see one of his own kneeling. This was a severe blow to his pride. He stood up angrily and approached the kneeling man, shouting, Where did this useless person come from? Mr. Carter, calm down. He just joined us today, one of Joshua's men quickly explained. Get rid of this trash, Joshua ordered, clearly annoyed. Peter Gant, get out! The lead man shouted. Peter Gant remained kneeling, seemingly oblivious to the command, and looked pitifully at Kiran. Kiran recognized Peter Gant as one of the bodyguards from the Ludwig family who had called Els. Considering the money the Carter family had transferred into his account, it made sense that these bodyguards were now working for them. Did you all join the Carter family? Kiran asked Peter Gant. Yes, Peter Gant responded. Kiran nodded slightly. Let's take him down together, the first man who had attempted to strike Kiran shouted, urging his companions. Take him down, they echoed in unison. Kiran looked at Peter Gant. I'd like to enjoy my drink in peace. Do you know what to do? To-do! Peter Gant stammered, standing up quickly. The group of men, intent on attacking Kiran, charged forward. Peter Gant suddenly sprang into action, unleashing a flurry of punches and taking down everyone who approached Kiran. His movements were swift and ruthless, leaving the onlookers stunned. Some even rubbed their eyes, unable to believe what they were seeing. Is he a traitor? The woman in red asked, her face filled with shock and disbelief. Who are you? Joshua demanded angrily at Peter Gant. If you don't want to die, kneel before young Master York and beg for mercy, Peter Gant shouted at the others. To him, these people were fools to go against Kiran. Peter Gant, are you insane? One of the men who had been knocked down got up and threw a punch at Peter Gant, seeking revenge. Bang! Peter Gant caught the fist, pulled the man towards him, and kneed him hard in the abdomen, causing him to cry out in pain and double over. Joshua and the others were completely shocked. Peter Gant's ruthless efficiency was terrifying. Why would such a person kneel before Kiran? Are you with him or with the Carter family? Another one of Joshua's men demanded angrily. I'd rather be young Master York's dog than one of you, Peter Gant declared, seizing the opportunity to pledge his loyalty to Kiran. He had witnessed Kiran's ruthlessness and strength and preferred to serve him than be his enemy. Kiran, somewhat surprised by Peter Gant's astuteness, nodded approvingly. For Joshua and his men, this was a huge insult. You're insane, Joshua shouted. Madness looks like this? Peter Gant retorted, charging at the others and beating them down with a series of brutal punches. The room filled with screams of pain and the sight of blood. Joshua and the 6 women watched in stunned silence. Is this some kind of undercover operation? They wondered. Peter Gant didn't touch Joshua or the women, instead turning to kneel before Kiran again. Young Master York. Not bad, Kiran nodded in approval. Thank you, young Master York. Thank you. Peter Gant was ecstatic. From now on, follow me, Kiran said. Peter Gant was momentarily stunned before he enthusiastically kowtowed to Kiran, unable to speak from excitement. With a wave of his hand, Kiran used his internal force to help Peter Gant stand. Peter Gant was deeply impressed, rubbing his hands nervously, unsure of what to say. No one disrespects the strong, especially those who practice martial arts. Peter Gant had always admired Kiran's strength and decisiveness. Now, being taken under his wing felt like winning the lottery. Kiran needed capable people like Peter Gant to handle situations like this. Joshua's expression kept changing. He realized Kiran was not easy to deal with, but he wasn't afraid. After all, a powerful dragon cannot suppress a local snake. In Dragon City, he was also a dragon. Thinking of this, Joshua became more arrogant. He looked at Kiran sharply and said, "Don't think you're invincible. If you don't apologize immediately, I'll make sure you leave here horizontally." Who are you talking to? Peter Gant stepped forward, ready to fight. Joshua, unfazed, looked at Peter Gant coldly. Are you so happy being a dog? Be careful. When your master dies, the dog will be cooked. Joshua, say one more word and I'll kill you, Peter Gant threatened but didn't act. Having pledged his loyalty to Kiran, he needed to follow his lead. Seeing Kiran stay silent, Joshua assumed he was scared and became even more arrogant. Kill me? Do you dare? The woman in red, emboldened by Joshua's arrogance, loudly declared, "This is Mr. Carter from the Carter family of Dragon City. Is Mr. Carter impressive?" A woman's domineering voice suddenly rang out from the entrance. Chapter 794. The woman was dressed in a sleek black mini-dress, her curves voluptuous and enticing, exuding both youth and beauty. However, her beautiful oval face was marred by annoyance. Her dewy eyes were fixed on Kiran York, gleaming with joy and longing. The woman was none other than Sofia Carter. Kiran was taken aback when he saw Sofia. What was this young girl doing in Dragon City instead of at the York Traditional Medicine Clinic in Bayville? Yvonne Quinn subtly kicked Kiran under the table a couple of times as if to say, "She's even followed you here." Kiran stayed calm. Who is this woman? Surely she's not trying to flaunt herself and seduce men? The woman in red remarked upon seeing Sofia's shapely figure and stunning attractiveness, which instantly overshadowed her own, filling her with envy. Thinking of how she belittled Joshua Carter, she openly mocked him, hoping to incite his anger. Slap! The sound of a crisp smack echoed. Ah! The woman in red couldn't help but scream as she covered her swollen cheek, staring in shock at Joshua who had just slapped her. Now, her face was symmetrically swollen on both sides. "Young Master Carter, why? Why did you hit Meme?" she asked, completely taken aback. "Sofia, what brings you here?" Joshua smiled and stepped forward, appearing very friendly. Sofia, seemingly unimpressed by Joshua's warmth, coldly responded, "I came here to save your life." "To save my life?" Joshua was momentarily taken aback. "Of course! If I hadn't come to save you, you wouldn't even know how you'd die today." Sofia glanced disdainfully at Joshua, then sneered at the 6 women, saying coldly, "If you want to die, go ahead, but don't drag the Carter family down with you." Although the women were annoyed, they saw the natural interaction between Joshua and Sofia and didn't dare to confront her, holding back their anger. Joshua's brows furrowed deeply as he instinctively looked towards Kiran. "Master, why didn't you tell me you were in Dragon City?" Sofia ignored the women and moved forward to grasp Kiran's arm. Looking at Yvonne in front of her, Sofia cheerfully greeted, "Hello, mistress." Feft. Kiran spit out his lemon water in surprise. He hadn't expected Sofia to suddenly call Yvonne mistress. Yvonne, however, was delighted, her beautiful face blooming with a smile. She removed a pendant from around her neck. "Since it's our first meeting, I didn't prepare a gift. This is for you." "Thank you, mistress." Sofia took it without any pretense, admiring the beautiful heart-shaped jade pendant. She lifted her right wrist, showing off the bracelet. "This is from my main mistress. The second mistress's pendant is even more valuable." Yvonne was very fond of this clever Sofia. Kiran, however, felt a bit frustrated. How had Yvonne so naturally taken on the role of mistress? "Master, do I have other mistresses? Let me know in advance so I can prepare gifts for them, too." Sofia clung to Kiran's arm, playfully whining. Kiran was utterly speechless. Was this crazy girl actually probing his secrets? Why are you here, really? Kiran asked irritably. I heard Master was in Dragon City, so I wanted to show hospitality, Sofia said with a smile, looking at the drinks on the table. Today's on me! Kiran didn't have a bad impression of Sofia. She was diligent in studying traditional medicine, and most importantly, she had the spirit of a chivalrous man. He had intended to teach Joshua a lesson, to make the Carter family come out and explain why they listened to the whims of a foreign country. However, he had to suppress that plan due to Sofia's arrival. His hand shook slightly, easily breaking free from Sofia's embrace. His gaze landed on Joshua. Joshua's face was quite unsightly, seeing his sister Sofia repeatedly calling Kiran master and being so openly affectionate was infuriating. Kiran's gaze met his. Joshua, more irate, challenged, Kid, who exactly are you? Go away. Sofia, clearly impatient, waved her hand dismissively at Joshua. Young Master Carter, is this Carter family member your sister? The woman in red, still feeling the sting of the slap, deliberately stirred trouble. Joshua's face could barely hold his expression, embarrassed in front of so many people, now with his sister openly embracing Kiran, acting as though she was eager to be taken by him. The most provocative part was knowing Kiran had a woman by his side, which made it seem even more disgraceful. Thinking of the main mistresses Sofia mentioned, likely Serena Zimmerman, his anger surged. Sofia, leave now. This doesn't concern you. What do you mean it doesn't concern M.A.? Sofia's expression hardened as she stared at Joshua, coldly warning, apologize to young Master York right now, or you won't be able to the consequences. What did you say? Joshua grew even more furious, about to explode. Apologize now. I'm saving you, Sofia loudly insisted, giving Joshua meaningful looks. Saving me? Joshua scoffed. Saving young Master Carter? The 6 women sneered. You mean humiliating him? Joshua's face turned steely blue, completely enraged. Frustrated, Sofia stepped forward, grabbing Joshua. If you don't want to die, just apologize. I won't apologize. Joshua's rage flared as he glared at Kiran. I will not apologize to someone like you. I'll tell you, I will cripple you today, definitely. Slap. Sofia suddenly stepped forward and slapped Joshua, cutting off his rant. Enraged, Joshua rounded on her. Sofia, you. Ignoring him, Sofia quickly turned to Kiran, her voice quivering. Young Master York, please, calm your anger. Are you so shameless just to be this man's woman? The woman in red shouted. This time, Joshua didn't stop her, his expression turning icy. I'm saving you, Sofia sharply told Joshua. Have you forgotten Miles Carter? Miles Carter? Joshua's head buzzed. If it weren't for Miles Carter's death, the Carter family wouldn't be choosing a successor, and he wouldn't have this chance to compete. What does he have to do with Miles Carter? Joshua asked Sofia. Sofia's lips twitched, about to explain. I killed Miles Carter? Kiran stated indifferently, as if murder was a commonplace event for him. The previously arrogant Joshua froze as if encased in ice, completely dumbstruck. Young Master Carter, Miles Carter's death was a good thing, wasn't it? The woman in red shook the icy Joshua. Joshua backhanded her across the face. Get out! Ah! The woman in red screamed. Thump! Joshua actually knelt down before Kiran. Chapter 795. The woman in red covered her already pitiful face, her eyes filled with anger and resentment. She looked at Joshua Carter kneeling on the ground, unable to contain her fury any longer, and shouted, Mr. Carter, didn't you say you wouldn't apologize? Weren't you saying? Thud, thud, thud. Joshua unexpectedly bowed his head 3 times in front of Kiran York. The woman's words in red were cut off, and she swallowed them back, staring dumbfounded at the scene before her, completely shocked. It wasn't just her. All the onlookers were equally stunned. Joshua, a possible future patriarch of the Carter family, was kneeling before Kiran. Most importantly, Joshua had said he wouldn't apologize, yet here he was, not only apologizing but doing so on his knees. This apology was sincere enough, heartfelt enough. Yet, it felt like a dream to everyone. No one had expected this. Even Sofia Carter seemed to be dreaming. Her brother was kneeling and apologizing. Though surprised, she felt a surge of happiness and quickly wiped away a tear. Young Master York, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Joshua sincerely apologized. Kiran glanced over Joshua's face, slightly taken aback, not expecting this man to rise above his pride, truly capable of humbling himself. Quickly, he realized this was a plea for help. Get up! You're my brother and he is my master. Of course he will forgive you, Sofia said, wiping her tears, and stepped forward to help her brother up. Joshua, however, did not rise, instead looking up at Kiran with a joyful expression. Thank you, young Master York, for accepting my sister as your disciple. Kiran inwardly smirked, noticing Joshua's clever way of adding prestige to himself. The man was indeed emotionally intelligent. Seeing the crowd around, Kiran waved his hand and helped Joshua to his feet. "It's all right now!" "Thank you, young Master York." Joshua's eyes brightened as he looked at Sofia. "Good sister, you have such a master as young Master York. Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Sofia rolled her eyes at Joshua, wishing she could punch him. Who was it that had just been full of hatred towards Kiran, and trying to steal another man's woman? "Young Master York, how about we sit in a private room inside?" Ignoring his sister's angry gaze, Joshua said with a smile plastered across his face. Kiran knew Joshua wanted to talk about something and did not refuse, nodding slightly. "Young Master York, please." Joshua quickly led the way, with Kiran following at ease. Yvonne Quinn and Sofia intentionally walked slowly, keeping their distance. Both women were clever and knew Joshua and Kiran needed to talk. The Snow Butterfly Ballroom did have private rooms, but Joshua preferred to look for beautiful women in the main hall, so he did not go to a private room. Being a high-level member here, he quickly arrived at a top-tier private room. Joshua opened the door and invited Kiran in, with Sofia and Yvonne following. "I need to go to the restroom," Yvonne suddenly said. "I'll accompany the mistress." Sofia knew she was giving Joshua and Kiran some time alone. Joshua breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly closed the door after entering. The accompanying bodyguard naturally stood at the door. "Thump!" Joshua knelt before Kiran again. "Young Master York, please, for my sister's sake, help me." Kiran knew Joshua needed something but hadn't expected him to kneel again. He was somewhat impressed with this young man's ability to humble himself in public and private. Seeing Kiran did not respond, Joshua quickly continued, "Young Master York, after you killed Miles Carter, our Carter family is now without a successor. My grandfather is preparing to establish a new heir and I want to compete, but I lack the strength." Kiran understood what he was asking for but remained silent. Unaware of Kiran's thoughts, Joshua went on, "My main competitor now is the son of my aunt's family, Robert Wise. Why would your Carter family consider a child from your aunt's family for an heir?" Kiran frowned and asked. Hearing Kiran speak, Joshua's heart leaped as if seeing a savior and hope, hastily explaining, "Young Master York, because our family lacks the strength to compete." "Lacks the strength?" Kiran was curious and gently waved his hand, helping Joshua up. Gratitude appeared on Joshua's face. After all, his sister and Yvonne would soon come back, and it would be embarrassing to be seen kneeling again. He suppressed his gratitude, saying with suppressed emotion, "We have 2 children in our family. I am the brother, and Sofia is the sister. My father is the second eldest in the family, and Miles Carter was my eldest uncle's son, naturally the first choice for a family heir." Kiran nodded slightly. "Now that Miles Carter is dead, doesn't that increase your chances?" "Theoretically, yes, but because my father is ill and considered disabled, so our siblings are overlooked and lack competitiveness." "Your father is ill?" Kiran asked curiously. "I studied medicine and became a disciple to cure my father." Sofia entered just in time to hear and speak. Kiran didn't say anything, just looked at Sofia. Sofia's eyes reddened and she began to cry again. Joshua also lowered his head, his face showing shame. Sofia looked up at Kiran. "When my father fell ill, the family was ready to give up on him. I knelt in front of my grandfather's door for 3 days and nights until he agreed to save him." Kiran frowned, thinking of the old Mr. Carter. He knew the old man was power-hungry but didn't expect him to be so cruel as to neglect his son's life, feeling very disdainful. Joshua wiped away a tear and added, "The condition for the exchange was that my sister would have to marry into a major family in the future." Wow. Sofia couldn't help but burst into tears, covering her face with her hands, her body weakening as she knelt. Yvonne quickly reached out to support her. Kiran's expression darkened even further. "My sister has always had the demeanor of a man, likes to stand up for justice, all to appear stronger," Joshua said with shame, wiping away tears. "Compared to my sister, I am much more of a waste." "Brother, it's not your fault. If you didn't act weak and lustful, how could you have survived until today? Miles Carter and his people would have probably killed you long ago." Sofia choked out. Joshua still wore a face of self-blame filled with complex emotions. Kiran looked at the 2 siblings, suddenly feeling admiration for them. They were not simple, managing to put on such a performance. He also felt the cruelty of major families. Aiming for the best development of the family meant survival of the fittest and preventing internal strife. But indeed, such major families were too heartless. "Master, will you help my brother?" Sofia, her knees weakening, was about to kneel to Kiran. Chapter 796. "He is your master," Yvonne Quinn urged, simultaneously waving her hand and steadying Sofia Carter. Kiran York also waved his hand. and a surge of internal force steadied Sofia. If you had to choose between saving your father and helping your brother, which would it be? Kiran looked at Sofia and asked. Save my father. Joshua Carter spoke first. Help my brother. Sofia, however, was very firm in her response. Silly sister, what's the use of helping me? Saving Dad is more important, Joshua chided. Sofia didn't reply but instead looked at Kiran. Kiran nodded slightly, gaining even more respect for the siblings. Joshua was not truly bad at heart. Sofia wasn't being selfish, rather she saw the situation more clearly. Even if her father was cured, if Joshua was ruined, what hope would their family have? In the end, they would still be doomed. Joshua also looked at Kiran, anticipation on his face. I will help treat your father's illness, Kiran said first. Really? Sofia was overjoyed. She couldn't help but wipe away her tears and said, I had thought about asking for your help before, but I was too embarrassed to ask. Silly girl. He is your master. What are you afraid of? Yvonne patted her head gently, chiding softly but with affection. Thank you, young Master York. Joshua was about to kneel in gratitude, but Kiran stopped him. Joshua, tell me about your competitor, Robert Wise, Kiran requested. Robert Wise is 27 this year and has been in charge of the Carter family's advanced pharmaceuticals. In the 3 years he's managed it, the company's growth has tripled, Joshua reported. He's not lacking in ability, Kiran was somewhat surprised and then asked, anything else? From a management perspective, I'm simply not as good as him. I'm seen as a waste in everyone's eyes, Joshua said with a bitter smile, objectively assessing himself. He continued, his father, Philip Wise, is the chairman of Titan Shipping, which has businesses all over the world and is also doing very well. Chairman of a shipping company? Kiran was curious and confirmed. Joshua nodded. Yes, how is his business with the foreign country? Kiran asked urgently. It should be good. His secretary is from the foreign country, Joshua said. His secretary? Kiran was shocked, wondering whether Joshua's aunt would agree with that. Joshua nodded. Exactly. Sofia's face showed a hint of disgust. That woman, you can tell she's no good just by looking at her, all beautiful and sexy. Kiran laughed instead. She must be younger than your aunt, right? Joshua and Sofia nodded. Much younger and prettier. And your grandfather still wants Robert Wise to compete for the family heir? Kiran was even more curious. Joshua and Sofia showed frustrated expressions but nodded. Yes. And now many in the Carter family are beginning to support him. Kiran now confirmed that there must be support from people of the foreign country behind Philip Wise, which is why he developed so rapidly. Regarding Robert Wise's advanced pharmaceuticals, it must also be supported by people like Philip Wise. Otherwise, tripling in 3 years is quite a feat. Seeing Kiran's silence, Joshua and Sofia were anxious but dared not ask further. Bring your father out tomorrow, find a place, and I will help treat him. Kiran decided to first save a life, but the Titan shipping gave him new hope. Thank you, young Master York. Thank you, Master. The siblings hurriedly expressed their gratitude. Let's contact each other by phone tomorrow. As for the competition for the family heir, if anyone pressures you now, you should voluntarily withdraw and not participate, Kiran advised. Voluntarily withdraw? Sofia was clearly reluctant. Okay, young Master York. Joshua surprisingly agreed immediately. Kiran looked at Joshua. Do you know why you should withdraw? I don't know, Joshua shook his head, honestly admitting. Kiran appreciated Joshua's obedience. Since he lacked the capability, it was good to be obedient. Again, first, save your father and we'll handle the rest step by step, Kiran confirmed. The siblings nodded repeatedly in agreement. I'll go first then. Kiran stood up ready to leave. Master, if possible, I still hope you can help my brother. Sofia held on to Kiran, her face full of hope. Sister, curing our father's illness is more important. Joshua was firm, really wanting to save their father. Master, if you can cure my father and help my brother become the family head, I will stay by your side for life, Sofia said, then quickly lowered her head, her face blushing. Although she acted like a tomboy, it was because she had not met a man who could help her. Kiran was her hope, so she spoke very straightforwardly. You are my disciple, and I will definitely help you if I can, Kiran smiled. Sofia was delighted but also a bit dismayed. Kiran clearly defined her as just a disciple. We'll talk about this later. Let's save my father first. Joshua, more flexible in matters of men and women, felt his sister shouldn't rush. Let's contact tomorrow, Kiran said, taking Yvonne Quinn and leaving. Sofia watched Kiran's departing figure, her arrogance replaced by a woman's elegance and shyness. She needed Kiran's help, but she also liked him. Joshua noticed but didn't expose her, just hoping to cure their father. Kiran and Yvonne walked downstairs and didn't get into the car immediately. The two stood in a corner of the parking lot, looking up at the night sky. Their moods were not very good. The Carter family was too cruel. Why do you think Philip Wise and his wife get along so well? Kiran still couldn't figure out this question. Yvonne looked up, tilting her fair face towards Kiran. I really know. You know? Kiran was delighted. Tell me quickly. Kiss me, and I'll tell you. Kiran glared at Yvonne. This is serious. Kissing me is serious too. If I had said just now that you already have several women, indirectly rejecting Sofia, how heartbroken would she be? Sophistry. Kiran glared angrily and did not kiss her. I really know why. And it's a very funny reason. Yvonne chuckled. Kiran was stunned, looking at Yvonne. Are you sure? Of course I'm sure. Yvonne displayed great confidence. Kiran frowned, staring at Yvonne, still disbelieving. No kiss, no talk. Yvonne playfully pretended to be haughty. Who? Kiran suddenly shouted behind Yvonne. Yvonne quickly turned her head to look back. Smack! Kiran kissed her right cheek and stepped back. Realizing she had been tricked, Yvonne, touching her moist cheek, smiled. You couldn't bear to kiss? No, you're just shy. Yvonne's face showed a flirtatious smile full of teasing. Quick, tell me, Kiran urged. The reason is actually quite simple. Chapter 797. Hurry up and tell me, Kiran York urged, seeing Yvonne Quinn deliberately delaying. Yvonne's beautiful oval face broke into a radiant smile, her almond-shaped eyes twinkling with amusement as she looked at Kiran, still pretending not to want to speak. Kiran was a bit puzzled and asked, What's going on? Have you ever kissed any woman other than Snowzander? Yvonne seemed to still be basking in the sweetness of the recent kiss. Kiran blushed and nodded. Wow! Yvonne exclaimed joyfully as if she had won a big prize, laughing loudly. I am so happy. Kiran couldn't help but shake his head, smiling as he urged. Get back to the main topic. It's just a matter of physical attraction. Yvonne stopped teasing and spoke seriously. Physical attraction. Kiran was taken aback. Yes, Yvonne looked at Kiran. Robert Wise likes his female secretary, and his wife can find other men. That can't be right. Kiran couldn't quite wrap his head around it. That would be too chaotic, wouldn't it? In this society, why not? Yvonne rolled her eyes at Kiran, who's as foolish as you, surrounded by so many beauties but not thinking about sleeping with them. That's going off topic. I have a question for you. Yvonne suddenly got mysterious. What is it? Have you ever thought about being with both me and Lillian Yanes at the same time? Yvonne's face turned red, but she kept her eyes on Kiran. Kiran quickly shook his head. No, absolutely not. He thought to himself, I really haven't. And even if I did, Lillian would kill me. Dream on. Yvonne seemed a bit disappointed. This is something many men dream of and you don't like it? Kiran shook his head. Not interested. Yvonne glanced down at Kiran's pants. Could it be that you're incapable? What do you mean by that? Kiran retorted, feeling the need to defend his manhood. Silly! I was just trying to provoke you! Yvonne rolled her eyes at him, laughing sweetly. Kiran was momentarily confused, then realized, You mean Sofia Sant is sexually unsatisfied? That's right. So, Robert Wise found himself a foreign secretary and got his wife a foreign man? I can't be sure, but that seems to be the case. Yvonne nodded, leaving Kiran deep in thought. If that were true, it would be quite shocking. After a moment, he looked up at Yvonne. Your theory seems quite plausible. Anyway, we will cross paths soon. You can verify it then. If that's really the case, this couple is truly bizarre, Kiran remarked. Physical needs might be one aspect. More importantly, Robert Wise might have been bought off. For his sake, he had to take certain measures and needed to control his wife. Kiran pondered. That makes sense. Being a daughter of the Carter family, that woman should be quite strong-willed. Yvonne nodded. Exactly, like Lillian Yanes. Aren't you afraid of her? Kiran nodded. But if you truly conquer her, both physically and psychologically, do you think she will still be so strong-willed? Kiran fell silent, realizing how little he understood women's emotions. A woman knows women better than men do, Yvonne said, adjusting Kiran's clothes. A woman like Snowzander is very unique. If she didn't want to avoid marriage, she wouldn't have let you succeed. Why do you say that? Kiran was curious. She lost her sanity because she wanted to avoid marriage, and you, a big scoundrel, took advantage of her. That was my lawful wife, with a marriage certificate. Yeah, right. By your logic, many men liked her, so why didn't they succeed? That's true. Lillian Yanes likes you, so you have to work hard. Yvonne suddenly encouraged with a smile. Back to the topic. Kiran had already understood the matter with Robert Wise and his wife. Robert Wise genuinely wanted to control his wife. Unable to do it himself, he likely found other means, leading to a mutually beneficial arrangement. Kiran didn't want to waste more time and prepared to leave. It's not off topic at all. Yvonne stepped forward and hugged Kiran's arm. When you sleep with Lillian Yanez, you'll be sleeping with me too, so we can be together. Kiran, he nearly choked. Kiran vowed, I will definitely break this love spell. I look forward to it, Yvonne teased, raising an eyebrow. Then you'll be free to be with many women. Kiran lowered his head, feeling completely defeated. Miss, do you need a man? Just then, a clumsy Dragon's Land accent sounded. Kiran and Yvonne looked over to see a tall white man standing in front of them, eyeing Yvonne greedily without any restraint. Seeing their gaze, the white man deliberately raised his arm to show his strength. Yvonne nudged Kiran. Husband, you can't satisfy me. Kiran quickly wiped his nose. What madness was this woman up to now? The white man extended his hand. Beautiful lady, nice to meet you, I'm Depicts. Yvonne did not extend her hand, just nodded shyly. Hello. I heard you need a man. If you do, would you consider me? Depicts puffed out his chest, displaying his physique. Husband. Yvonne held back laughter, deliberately calling out to Kiran. Kiran's face turned sour. Depicts ignored Kiran's expression, smirking. Lady, I'm not just a pretty face. A pretty face. Yvonne was surprised to hear this term from a foreigner. Looking at Kiran, who was about 1.8 meters tall but clearly shorter than Depicts, the comparison stung. Being called a pretty face annoyed Kiran, and he was about to snap. Husband, I only need this many times a day. Yvonne held up her white index finger, indicating once. Kiran thought to himself, this crazy woman is really stirring up trouble. Depicts' eyes lingered on Yvonne's fair, jade-like finger, captivated by its neat, beautiful shape. Her oval nails, though not manicured, were perfectly trimmed and alluring, driving him a bit mad. Beautiful lady, I can manage more than that. Depicts finished, arrogantly looking at Kiran with eyes full of disdain and mockery. Really? Yvonne's face lit up with joy. Really? Depicts was thrilled, thinking Yvonne was falling for him. Eyeing her frail appearance, he thought. One time will make her surrender. Yvonne released Kiran and walked toward Depicts. Kiran was stunned. Had this woman gone mad? Yvonne's eyes were cold with a hint of a smile. Depicts opened his arms, ready to embrace her tightly then. Chapter 798. Ouch! Yvonne Quinn suddenly exclaimed, her body seemingly unsteady, and she began to fall to the side. Depicts, appearing very concerned, quickly reached out to support her. Kiran York also hurriedly reached out to grab Yvonne. Yvonne's left hand lightly waved towards Depicts, and a poison fell on him. Naturally, her body was caught by Kiran. Yvonne nestled into Kiran's arms like a delicate bird relying on its mate. As for Depicts, he ended up making an unnecessary effort, not even touching Yvonne. Husband, you scared me to death. Yvonne wrapped her arms around Kiran's neck, her legs encircling his waist, clinging to him as if she wouldn't let go. Kiran thought to himself, what are you scared of? You just want to take advantage of me and make me hold you. Yvonne, sensing Kiran's thoughts, pinched him under his armpit in dissatisfaction. Kiran held her tightly. Let's go! Wait! Depicts called out, looking at Kiran and Yvonne. Is there a problem? Kiran asked irritably. Sir, if you love someone, you should give them happiness. If you can't give her happiness, why keep her from pursuing it? Depicts spoke with conviction, as if he could guarantee Yvonne's happiness. Mind your own business. Kiran really wanted to kick this idiot away. You misunderstand, Yvonne said, still clinging to Kiran and looking at Depicts with contempt and disdain. You said it. Depicts was angry, glaring at Yvonne. That's my requirement, or I can't handle it, Yvonne said, laughing in Kiran's arms. Depicts felt as if he'd been utterly humiliated. Husband, let's go, Yvonne said happily, seeing Depicts' anger. Kiran carried Yvonne towards their sports car. Depicts, still unwilling to give up, quickly walked to the parking lot, getting to Kiran's sports car first. He patted the Lamborghini and said to Kiran, what can you offer her? Can you even afford a car like this? Kiran and Yvonne looked at each other in astonishment. Wasn't this the car Lindsay Ludwig had given them? Depicts acted like it was his own. Was he delusional? Yvonne's eyes sparkled mischievously, and she said in fake amazement, wow, a Lamborghini. It's so cool. Depicts' face lit up with excitement and pride as he said to Yvonne, come with me. I'll let you ride in the sports car, live in a villa, and experience a queen's treatment. You'll know the beauty of life. Really? Yvonne's eyes seemed to light up with longing. Of course it's true. Depicts patted the sports car. This is my car. Then take it for a spin and show me, Yvonne said, feigning admiration. Sure. Depicts didn't think twice, looking at Kiran arrogantly. This kind of sports car is something you'll never be able to afford. Hecht tried to unlock the car with his fingerprint, but it didn't open. His expression changed. How was that possible? He pulled the door hard, but it still didn't open. Hecht felt embarrassed and tried again forcefully. Yvonne smirked and pressed the unlock button on Kiran's key. Thud. Hecht's forceful attempt made him crash into the car next to him, setting off a series of alarms and denting the door. Ignoring the noise, Hecht said proudly, "I'll take you for a spin now and show you what a luxury car is." He fumbled for the car keys, realizing they were with his companion, and tried the fingerprint lock again. Nothing happened. After multiple attempts, there was still no response. Hecht's face turned awkward. "Is it working? I'm waiting," Yvonne said with a smile. "I'll check if there's an issue with the car," Hecht mumbled, looking around. Vroom. Suddenly, the roar of an engine filled the air and another sports car drove up. Hecht was stunned to see it. Kiran and Yvonne also turned to look. Inside the car was a blonde woman with striking blue eyes, her face alluring enough to stir a man's desires. To their surprise, the woman was also driving a Lamborghini, the same color as theirs, with only the last digit of the license plate different. "What a coincidence." "Alice," Hecht called out. "Hecht, why are you sitting in someone else's car?" Alice asked curiously. Hecht realized he was in the wrong car, wondering how it had opened. He got out, checked the license plate, and saw it ended in 939, just like his. The third digit was different. Awkward. He had seen the last digits and assumed it was his car, given the rarity of such expensive cars. "It's not your car?" Yvonne asked, feigning curiosity. Hecht's pale face showed embarrassment but quickly regained composure. "I mistook it for mine." He walked over to Alice's car and patted it. Alice frowned. "Hecht, who is she?" "The woman whose man can't satisfy her and needs me to," Hecht said arrogantly, still not believing Yvonne couldn't be satisfied by Kiran. Alice glanced at Hecht, displeased. Unbothered, Hecht turned to Yvonne. "How about a ride in my sports car?" "Husband, look," Yvonne said to Kiran, hesitating. Hecht thought Yvonne was tempted but concerned about Kiran, so he smugly said to Kiran, "A man who can't provide material pleasure or satisfy a woman in bed isn't a real man." He patted his car. "This is a car you'll never afford." "Husband." Yvonne's voice dragged out in a pout as if she wanted to go with Hecht. Hecht's arrogance grew. Kiran ignored him and calmly walked to his car, setting Yvonne down. "Let's go home." Hecht was stunned. Chapter 799. "Hey, you're stealing that car." Hecht didn't believe it was Kiran York's car, so he ran up to block him, shouting loudly. Kiran had already inserted the car key and turned it. The engine roared to life. Hecht jumped back in shock when he heard the engine. "Honey, moi!" Yvonne Quinn kissed Kiran on the cheek, her face full of happiness. Kiran started the car and slowly drove out. Hecht felt like his face had been slapped in public, humiliated. He had looked down on Kiran, thinking he couldn't afford a luxury car, but it turned out Kiran had one. Worse, he had mistakenly shown off someone else's car as his own, making a fool of himself in front of everyone. In the end, it was he who looked like a clown, showing off and making a fool of himself. Hecht felt so ashamed he wished he could find a hole to crawl into. His anger towards Kiran for his low-key demeanor made him want to beat him up. The car roared off into the distance, leaving Hecht with an unattainable view of its rear. Yvonne sat in the car, laughing uncontrollably, her eyes full of satisfaction and happiness. Kiran also felt a sense of joy. Hecht had thoroughly embarrassed himself. Damn it. It wasn't until Kiran's car disappeared that Hecht realized, still cursing loudly, though no one could hear him anymore. "Hecht, get in the car," Alice called. Hecht, still swearing, got into the car, glaring at Alice. "Where did you go?" "Philip Wise just took me for a quickie." Alice's face was full of disgust. "A quickie?" Hecht looked at Alice's ultra-short skirt. "Yeah, a quickie," Alice sneered, implying it was over before she even felt anything. "Damn it." What a useless piece of trash. Hecht channeled his anger at Kiran onto Philip Wise. "All right, now come and satisfy me," Alice said, starting the car and driving away. Hecht, aroused by Yvonne, found an outlet for his desires, his face filled with anticipation. Kiran, driving, heard Hecht and Alice's conversation and curiously looked at Yvonne. "I used a long-distance sound transmission goo to monitor them," Yvonne explained. "How did you figure out their identities?" Kiran asked. "It was just a random guess, but it turned out to be true." What a coincidence. Kiran was pleasantly surprised, not expecting this outcome. Indeed, it was quite a surprise. Yvonne agreed. Both felt a sense of accomplishment. Kiran turned the car around. using the long-distance sound transmission GU to locate Dehecht and Alice, who were already frantically going at it in the corner of a residential parking lot. Yvonne mischievously started recording the scene, and Kiran didn't stop her. Dehecht indeed had some stamina, and the two were going at it for quite a while. Eventually, Kiran lost interest and sat back in the car. Yvonne, however, recorded the entire process seriously. When she returned, she saw Kiran almost asleep and laughed. "Are you feeling inadequate seeing others perform so well?" "Of course not." Kiran glared at her, starting the car to leave. "What if we gave them a little something?" Yvonne suggested mischievously. "What do you mean?" Kiran asked curiously, like making Alice insatiable and Dehecht impotent. "What do you think Philip Wise and his wife would do?" Yvonne laughed. Kiran's interest was piqued. Internal conflict among enemies was the best kind of conflict. The idea was brilliant. He looked at the exhausted couple, nodding in agreement. "Not bad." "I'll handle it," Yvonne volunteered with a smile. "You." Kiran was curious. Yvonne didn't say anything, getting out of the car and walking toward Dehecht and Alice. Kiran watched Yvonne's back, wondering what she would do. Yvonne stopped halfway, raising her hand. Kiran saw white powder drifting toward the couple. The powder quickly turned into moving entities, almost as if alive. Returning, Yvonne shrugged. "The yin-yang goo. It'll drive them crazy, almost to death, then make them mad again." "Amazing." Kiran couldn't help but praise her. "Just know how amazing I am. Be careful, or I'll do the same to you and Snow Xander." "Go ahead," Kiran responded, feigning indifference. "You jerk! Bullying me!" Yvonne pouted, playfully annoyed at Kiran's honesty. Of course, she wouldn't actually do that to him. Meanwhile, Dehecht and Alice were starting another round of passion. Kiran and Yvonne drove away, waiting for the show to unfold. Their outing tonight hadn't disrupted the Carter family much, but they'd learned a lot about the family dynamics and discovered some hidden truths. When they returned to the Ludwig residence, it was eerily quiet without the bodyguards, almost desolate. Lindsay Ludwig was waiting outside for Kiran and Yvonne. Seeing their car, she excitedly stood up and came over to greet them. "Sis!" Yvonne called happily, grabbing Lindsay's hand. Lindsay, not wanting to be overly intimate with Kiran in front of her sister, asked, "Was it successful?" "Very successful," Kiran replied with a smile. "Is Mom awake?" Yvonne asked. "Dad hasn't come out, so I'm not sure," Lindsay said. "You're back." Finn Ludwig came out, still looking a bit awkward. "Is Mom awake?" Yvonne naturally called the woman who wasn't her biological mother, Mom. "Not yet." Finn looked at Kiran, his eyes full of inquiry, hoping she would wake up soon. "Let her rest for a while," Kiran suggested. "Okay," Finn agreed quickly. "I have something to ask you," Kiran said to Finn. Finn nodded gravely, thinking it was about the destruction of the York family. Lindsay wanted to dissuade him but was stopped by Finn. Yvonne looked at Kiran, unsure if he would get angry. The feud between the Ludwig and York families will be settled in the afterlife. "I won't pursue it," Kiran said. Finn was surprised. "I want to know about the Carter family," Kiran added, looking at Finn. Chapter 800. "What's going on with the Carter family?" Finn Ludwig quickly asked. Earlier, when Kiran York demanded $5 billion from each of the backing forces to ransom their people, the money from the foreign country was given by the Carter family, Lindsay Ludwig explained quickly. "The Carter family?" Finn's face darkened. He fell into a brief contemplation before saying, "So Els has already bought off the Carter family. As one of the 4 major families in Dragon City, I never expected the Carters to stoop to this level." Finn's voice was filled with disdain. How could the 4 major families of Dragon City Ludwig, Carter, Campbell, and Duncando such a thing? Lindsay's tone was full of doubt and dissatisfaction. Finn's expression grew even more serious. Kiran raised an eyebrow and asked Finn, "Is it possible that all these families are involved?" "I can't be certain," Finn said, his face dark and somber. "But I can say for sure that it's a possibility." "What do you mean?" Kiran asked. "The stronger a family becomes, the more cautious they become, fearing the loss of what they currently possess," Finn explained. Kiran nodded. "That's possible. In today's highly developed economy, globalization is inevitable. These families have expanded into various fields, and if foreign capital gets involved, they can easily be manipulated," Finn continued after a moment of thought. "To maintain their family's status, they might succumb." "Shameless," Lindsay spat angrily. "It's not shameless. It's very shrewd," Finn said calmly and objectively. "Shrewd?" Lindsay clearly disagreed with her father. "It's like our Power Hub investment group. If it weren't for Kiran's direct exposure and public announcement, I wouldn't have made such a choice." Finn looked at Kiran deeply. "That's how people are. Once they have something, they don't want to lose it and are afraid of losing it. Lindsay's brows knitted tightly, obviously displeased by his words. Kiran didn't oppose, but looked at Finn and said, "So your suggestion is? It's your idea, what you are thinking." Finn looked at Kiran. "What idea?" Lindsay asked, puzzled. She didn't understand how the conversation had turned to an idea. Yvonne, sensing Kiran's thoughts through the love spell, said, "If you want to act, you can't move all at once. If there's too much upheaval, it'll be trouble." "Act against who? The 4 major families?" Lindsay asked urgently. "Let's start with the Carter family," Kiran decided firmly. "Targeting the Carters is fine, but you need to handle one key aspect," Finn reminded Kiran. "What aspect?" Kiran asked seriously. "The stability of the medical sector in Dragonsland," Finn emphasized. "They control a significant part of the medical field here. If something goes wrong, the common people will suffer." "Kiran's medical skills are excellent," Lindsay quickly interjected. "I know. Otherwise, your mother would be dead by now," Finn acknowledged, but still looked at Kiran. "Even if your skills are excellent, you're just one person. Don't forget, the Carter family has many interests in the medical field. If things go wrong, you might not be able to handle it all." Kiran looked back at Finn, appreciating his calmness and strategic thinking. It was no wonder his father valued Finn, and that foreign financial groups would invest under his control. "Kiran, you need a comprehensive plan," Finn reminded Kiran again, seeing his silence. Kiran collected his thoughts and looked at Finn, nodding seriously. "Don't worry. I understand. If you need anything, just let me know. I can't help financially right now, but I still have some resources," Finn said, looking at his daughters. "They are very capable and can be your strong support." "I can do anything," Lindsay said first. "I used to work in pharmaceuticals. My company was taken over by your wife," Yvonne joked with a smile. Kiran's face showed a hint of satisfaction. "Lindsay, focus on investment to ensure the stability of pharmaceutical companies." "Got it? I'll contact Serena soon," Lindsay obediently agreed. "Yvonne will handle the pharmaceutical company." "Tomorrow we'll aim to acquire a company," Kiran said. "No problem," Yvonne agreed. "I'll set up a clinic here, establish a foothold, and then gradually confront them." Kiran calmly planned the next steps. "That's feasible," Finn said with a look of relief, then added after a moment of thought, "If you want to open a traditional medicine clinic, you can approach Justin Kruger's clinic." "Where?" Lindsay asked curiously. Finn nodded. "Justin Kruger's biggest wish is to cure his granddaughter. If Kiran can achieve that, Justin Kruger will not only respect him, but might also help him establish the clinic." "Good," Kiran agreed, though he didn't know much about Justin Kruger's clinic or his granddaughter's condition. "Lindsay, continue acquiring and merging pharmaceutical companies. That will quickly lead to growth," Finn advised again. "That works too," Kiran agreed. "With Snow Xander managing things in Bayville, solidifying our foundation, it'll be easier for us to develop. Controlled expansion is the key. Just manage it well," Finn emphasized. "Thank you," Kiran expressed his gratitude to Finn. "I'm redeeming myself," Finn said, his face showing guilt. "Fortunately, most of the money I've earned over the years is still intact, or I would have been a national disgrace." Talking about this, Finn's eyes were filled with emotion and remorse. Kiran didn't comment. People's hearts are ultimately fair, and more importantly, mistakes can be corrected. It was now up to Finn to change himself. "Kiran, you will create miracles," Finn encouraged him. Kiran smiled confidently. "We're all going to marry a miracle worker," Yvonne joked with a smile. Finn laughed and walked away. Kiran glared at Yvonne. Yvonne shrugged, unconcerned. "Kiran, come with me," Lindsay said, pulling Kiran along.